created the United Left Party and these ecological initiatives, where 2000s you had like strong, let's say, socialist movement connected to these alter globalization movements, which already in that time carried a strong ecological note. So connecting, let's say, capitalist critique with the critique of environmentalism. I mean, this, what is now kind of coming to the mainstream, has been in the alter globalization movement very present in the discussions. So I would say there were different groups and people that were very much engaged in this, but they were still on the level of NGOs. So organizations like Greenpeace, Humanotera, they were engaged in the Slovenian local scene, but that stayed on the kind of NGO level, or making some small protests around some local issue. And that was it. In the sense of the 1990s, Green Party was quite strong party, but it was split in a similar way, like a lot of green movements, on the conservative part, you know, not just like having a clean environment, but also clean environment from the immigrants and the people who are more on the anti-capitalist left already in the 90s. So you have left and right, and then it basically splits. Part of the party goes to this liberal democracy, part of the party disappears or goes to Janez Janša or to conservatives. So you have the absence of political parties for 20 years, basically. There are some individuals and some opinion leaders that like the ecological kind of issues, and there is a very important person that is then former ombudsman, Hanžek. He basically enters into this movement and also says we should try to make a party. So this was some kind of the constellation of forces, and on the first elections they gain a bit more than 1%. In Slovenia, if you gain 1%, you get finances, so they could get some people employed and, you know, to start developing a little bit the grassroots networks. There was a lot of activism going on, but media largely ignored this issue, because if you are not in parliament, they don't really give you any attention. So there were some, you know, actions in Ljubljana or on some local issues. So that was a little bit it of TRS, right? The Sustainable Development Movement and Party that comes into existence. So 2010, 11, 12, these are the years where it kind of starts brewing. So, you know, the first election, 2014, there was like kind of a young generation of people connected with some other, you know, initiatives that were, you know, basically embracing democratic socialism. So it wasn't anymore this kind of Yugo nostalgia or kind of, you know, let's just go to drink beer in Tito bar and listen to the music or go to see the monuments. But this was really the whole kind of generation that, you know, started making analysis, that started organizing and believing we really have certain, you know, urgent situation in front of us, in front of the future. And let's think of serious alternative. So for this initiative for democratic socialism became kind of this more radical left party, which entered into coalition with the Sustainable Development, which later renamed in Eco-Socialist Party. So it also radicalized itself through the process with some civil initiative agents and some old pensionist party, left party. So it was a coalition of very different agents, and I would call as a kind of learning hour, you know, basically learning how to deal with politics with a lot of negotiations. So already having a coalition within itself made it very rich. So it enters the parliament with 6%, which was like making through threshold of 4% in Slovenia, which is not so easy for any kind of new party that has almost zero finances. But then through years, both because of the parliamentary work and because how media kind of contacts and wants answer from one person and so on, the parties and United Left Coalition had a lot of conflicts and struggles. So it basically kind of then merged through two central agents, which were eco-socialists, so like kind of, it's called the green dimension and then the red dimension of Initiative for Democratic Socialism. So you have what would, I think, much better be called green left. Now it's just left, Levica party, but it's never too late. One can still rename in the future, which could be one possible view. So this is the first etap. So the second part is then the 2017-18. So the preparation, and it comes as a small surprise, but not really that, you know, it's basically on the same spot as Social Democrats with a bit more than 9%. So it was already then like, you know, it's Janez Janša, the right wing, there is Šarec, so kind of the center, and there is Social Democrats and Left Party on the third spot, or fourth spot, if we are like really with this percentage. And you can see that the party is most kind of preferenced by people under 35. So it was the first party, like it really won elections in this sense among the youth, and it's the same, even better how it looks now for these elections. And yeah, in all what you mentioned in Ljubljana, it did very well, did well on at the seaside, so which is traditionally more kind of left, anti-fascist and so on, has a strong legacy also in Maribor. So it's like in the bigger kind of urban cities and among the youth, it has a big support. But yeah, it didn't, you know, what I think, if we talk a little bit about the failures, it failed to really address the kind of these more precarious and working people of still some big factories and so on. So it didn't make any kind of development on that side. So that is one part, what I would call problem. The second is that because of the parliamentary work, there was not, if we put some initiatives, so much work done on the grassroots level, so that there would be more kind of movement initiatives done. So that would become kind of my two basic criticisms of the left initiative. But for sure, in programmatic sense, it's the most, it's the strongest party in the, if you analyze, other political parties are basically just following the trend, have always been neoliberal and pro-austerity, just that some want to privatize very fast. So kind of this, the right, urbanists, so to speak, Janez Janša, and some want to do it in a more gradual way. But they do it, they are. So it's agenda of privatization, austerity has been there already for the last 15 years. So in this sense, Levica Left Party's role is to push the agenda to more progressive and socially oriented policies and green policies. And the green policies is actually a part of austerity, one policy where the center left and right always agreed. So there was not much discrepancy between the exploitation of the environment or having a complete lack of vision of future.
Zagreb is ours started in 2017. a few months before local elections, the ones before the last local elections in Croatia. It's an initiative, but it is a political organization. It started as a we called it platform. So the idea was to not to have a political party, a formal one, because that's the way you can take part in elections in Croatia. But then also to have the possibility for people who do not want to be party members formally to take part in the political process and in the organization in a way. So we designed kind of a hybrid model of organization where you have the party and a broader group that is called the platform, where people can take part and take part in the decisions, in the political decisions as well, while not being members. That was quite necessary back then, because 5 years ago, not many people were ready really to commit to be like politicians, because back then it sounded really, how can I call that? It sounded a bit scary for people, at least. So how it came about, in Croatia, in Zagreb, especially in Zagreb, there were, I'd say for at least 8 or even 12 years, so like 3 cycles of elections. There were kind of different civil society initiatives that had kind of a political dimension, not necessarily electoral political dimension, but in a way, contesting the way that politics work locally, also fighting against privatization of public space, fighting against gentrification and this kind of cases. And there were a lot of local initiatives that had some political impact, right? So at some point, it was already, I think, in 2013, it was clear that this is a political thing. There were many events. It's hard to explain, maybe, or it's hard to give one specific reason for that. But I'd say, yeah, it just got, it's a generational thing. It is also a matter of political circumstances back then in 16, Trump, Brexit, the rise of the right-wing populists. And then we also, that's maybe my motivation, my personal motivation was like, okay, if all of them can, if all these right-wing populists can do it, we should, create a counter force. It's our responsibility in a way. So, okay, that's maybe a broader motivation, but then what we did is actually we started with the city, with not right away with the national political party that would be like labeled as, I don't know, green left party or something like that. But we decided to kind of start small, start from the place where we have the most social capital, where we have the most people from different backgrounds. And I'd say it was initially, the platform was composed of people from with an activist background, with labor union background, and let's say academia. And our most important inspiration was Barcelona in Comú and municipalist movements that became kind of a thing around 2014, 2015. So the inspiration or the idea was that you should start with doing progressive politics on neighborhood level, not on like national level with great ideological stories, but to start small, and not only to start small, but also that the immediate communal level of problem solving or participation is actually the level where you can really then participate in politics from, let's say, bottom up. We took part in this election 2017 and won 4 seats in the city parliament, which is okay, there was 4 out of 51 were clearly a minority, but there was, from the perspective of these new initiatives or new political initiatives in Zagreb, especially, that was a breakthrough. Nobody made that before, from these kind of new left, new progressive, green, and so on initiatives. I will not talk about what the government looked like back then. It was a big inspiration for everyone, because we had a super corrupt mayor and super corrupt government that was in power for 20 years already. So it was also, the opportunity also came from that, the motivation came from that. So we won 4 seats, and we used them very well throughout these 4 years until the next election in 2021. What we did back then in 2017 and repeated every time was that we made a coalition. Zagreb is ours, is one party, but we actually joined forces with other 4 left and green parties in Zagreb that were active in Zagreb. So in 2019 there were European elections, and there was we decided kind of that we have to take part in elections that are coming up, although they're not municipalist level. You cannot really win with municipalist ideas on European level, of course, on the level of the European Parliament. But we decided to kind of go for it. So we took part in the European elections and won 1.something%. So it was not enough to have a seat there, but it was, we came out. That's just Možemo became visible. But then next year we had an early parliamentary election, and what we actually did is, like, from start of 2020. As you know, we had the pandemic, we had the earthquake early 2020 in Zagreb, which was it was quite a catastrophe. It was not, there were not very many people hurt physically, but the city was, yeah, there was a lot of destruction happened here, and you know, the response both from the national government and from the city of Zagreb was really kind of not appropriate. And so we took this opportunity also in May 2020 to kind of become the voice of political voice that advocates for solving this issue as fast as possible, the renovation of Zagreb. And that's where we won really both sympathies, visibility, and I'd say this produced a sort of, because we took Zagreb as a main topic, but something that is also a national issue, because the government needs to act. So yeah, as you know, we won 7 seats in the national parliament, which is also a minority that the right wing or the conservatives won. But still, it got us a lot of visibility, especially the now mayor of Zagreb. He became also a member of parliament. And yeah, this space that we got then from July 2020 until the elections in 2021, that was, you know, that creates a huge stage for promoting your politics and so on. We won the election. We got 23 out of 47 seats and formed a coalition with the Social Democrats that is stable and working. We also won the mayor position. So yeah, and now we are where we are.
Okay, so thank you very much for being with us today, Predrag. As agreed, I'm going to ask you a few questions about the citizen initiative Don't Let Belgrade Drown. So I'll proceed by asking you to tell us a bit about how the initiative emerged, and also where did your ideas come from, and who were you inspired from?
Mm-hmm. Firstly, to thank for invitations. And I'm Predrag Momčilović. I'm a coordinator of International Secretariat of Initiative Belgrade Down, or Ne davimo Beograd, how it's translated in Serbian. And initiative now it's movement. It's emerged from, it started against one super bad mega project in Belgrade. It's called Belgrade Waterfront, and the government announced that project already in 2012, and it was problematical from many perspectives, from urbanistical perspective, social law, traffic, and like initiative start firstly as a group of friends who are fighting against these protests, but everything, I would say, exploded in 2016 when during the night, it was actually election night in 2016, some we still don't know whom, but we suppose it's people connected with government, demolish like half of the street in Hercegovačka to free more space for this mega project, which is built together with investors from Dubai, and it's problematical because you are giving most valuable land in the city center to foreign investors, and you don't have almost anything from that, and it's changing completely structure of the Belgrade. Right now we have the highest building there in Belgrade, and it's changing landscape of Belgrade. And we start with that, and I think movement grew out from series of mass protests, which will lead after this demolition in Hercegovačka. But after that, we start to deal also with other problems which happening in Belgrade, ecological and social one, and we decide to take part in a local election in 2018, and we had 3.44% of votes, which is, back then it was not enough to get into local parliament, but now threshold it's even lower, and we are preparing for next election, which will be held in beginning of April. It will be republic parliamentarian elections and local Belgrade elections, also presidential election, and we expect that we will have much more better results this time. And about inspiration, I would say that probably we were inspired by left, green, and municipalist movements, mostly from Western Europe, which we follow before, but still I would say that we build our pathway by own, and we realized that we didn't start like, oh, we are like left-green initiative and we want to be left-green initiative or movement, but we realize on a way that that our values are left-green, and that we are left-green movement. And right now we are even in process to joining European Green Party to become a member of this wider green family.
Excellent. You already touched on some of the things I wanted to ask, and you mentioned the coming elections. So you are also just entered a coalition that will run for the election, and it's called We Must, Moramo. Can you tell us a bit about that, and also what are we heading towards to, and what can we expect at the election? A little bit more of what you already said. Thank you.
Yeah, first I would start because from last year, I think Serbia is not considered anymore as democratical state, but it's like hybrid regime, which is going slightly to authoritarian state, and it's always problem for political organizing when you are in opposition. But like as you said, a few days ago, we signed this coalition agreement with two more organizations, one called Ekološki Ustanak, or Ecological Uprising, and it's mostly people who are focused on fight against ecological degradation, and they're famous against their struggle to stop mini hydropower plant projects in protecting the areas in Stara Planina and some other, and they are also were involved in stopping project of exploitation of lithium in Western Serbia. And second partner in this coalition, it's a platform called Action, Akcija, and it's led by Nebojša Zelenović, who are former mayor of Šabac, one maybe most green municipality in Serbia, but currently we don't have any oppositional mayors or even any opposition in parliament. And for next election, we expect pretty good result with this coalition, and also these opinion polls are giving us more than 5% in Serbia and around 13% in Belgrade, which is pretty good for one newly coalition, because most of these people are new into politics in Serbia, and they are representing these left-green values. And we believe that there is possibility that we will be maybe part of new government in Belgrade after 3rd of April. For whole Serbia, we are not completely sure what will happen, but for Belgrade, we believe that change can start from Belgrade. And yeah, in this coalition, we are focused mostly on two main issues. One is ecological degradation, and other is social exclusion, because like more than 26% of population of Serbia live under the poverty level, and this is big problem, especially also during the winter. We have problem with energy poverty, and with which then leads to, for example, degradation of air quality, because people when they come from energy poverty, they need to use worst energy resource to heat their homes, and then we have air pollution, which is where it is most polluted city in Europe, but also in the world.